All right. Hey, everyone. We are glad that you have joined us. We are doing our sermon recap, Let's Talk, where we take the sermon from Sunday, the series that we're going through, and we discuss it. What's the latest series about?
Well, the whole series is about momentum, and we've been talking about how a church can have momentum when the theory. I made a mistake with the theory. The first week I said it was mass times volume equals momentum, and then the second week I said mass times volume squared, which is actually the theory for kinetic energy, which is a whole
Einstein.
different. Yeah. Anyway, but the mass times velocity, when you have that, you have momentum. The mass of a church is the people who are there, and the velocity is whether you're all going after the same purposes at the same time. And a church that gets on board can do quite a bit of damage for the kingdom. We talk about how a bullet, though it's very small in mass, because it moves so fast, can do great things. But a train, which is much bigger, moving fast, can do even more. And a church, when it all gets on the same page, going in the same direction at the same time, there's a lot of power there. And so the first week we talked about the resurrection. It was the resurrection that ultimately launched the first church, and it really is the resurrection that is still the outside power that influences us today to become a body in motion. But this week I wanted to talk a little bit about finding a mentor. And actually this week and that we just had and the week coming up, where we're talking about being accountable, they both kind of go on that theme. Part of being a church in motion is putting yourself in the chain, and there are people who have been further than you, who are setting the pace, who are moving ahead, and you're learning to follow after their example, and then you're pulling people behind you to where they need to go. And this whole idea of mentoring or discipleship, I think it's biblical, and we've been talking about it a lot as a staff and elders for the last 6 months to a year. How as a church can we get to be better about that? And we're still talking about that.
Right.
One thing that we discovered, and even this video that we're doing today, that we discovered during the pandemic, is that if the only purpose for a church is to convey information to people, if that's all we're about, on Sunday morning you come and you receive the information and you go home and do with it whatever you want, and that's the whole purpose of church, is just to convey information to people. We can do that a lot cheaper and honestly a lot more effectively, like we're doing it right now.
Right.
We don't need a building. Gabe and I could do this from our house and get together. We could. You don't even know if we're wearing shorts right now. We wouldn't even have to dress up for this at all. I could be wearing flip-flops right now.
For the record, we're not wearing shorts right now.
For all you know, I could wear flip-flops. But you really would, very little effort, and we could convey the information. If it's just about conveying information, technology, it's easier to do it this way. But church is much more than just about conveying information. In church, there's these discipleship relationships, and really that's mostly what it's about, whether that is formed through a ministry team or a small group team or some sort of a fellowship operation where you're getting together with you. Even a softball team at church can be a powerful chance to build relationships, and out of those relationships get closer to Jesus Christ. And all of those things combined with, I guess, getting the information, that's what really brings momentum to a church. And this is part of what we're talking about today and over the last couple of weeks is building those relationships. Now, in mentoring or having somebody disciple you, and I can go first or you can go first, but mm-hmm. There have been some people in my life who I could point to pretty quickly to say, man, without that guy or without that couple or without that lady, I don't know that I would be where I'm at. Mm-hmm. You probably have some of those in your head too.
Yeah. I when I was in high school, some of the people that poured into me a lot more than I ever had anyone pour into me were my youth pastors, Ozzy and April. He and his wife would pour it all into me and Brittany as well. Mm-hmm. And people that would answer questions. He would always take any text or phone call. He'd let me come over. He would spend time with me. And for me, it was really more about spending time. Not that Ozzy was the smartest guy in the world, which he is pretty smart, but it wasn't intelligent.
Ozzy, if you're watching.
It wasn't intelligence. Yeah. It was being willing to spend time with someone, to listen, to to put up with him, and that was important to me. Where I was at a stage in life where I thought I wasn't very interesting. People didn't really want to spend time with me, stuff like that, and it all hits us differently. I know me being here, moving to Indiana, I have had to learn a lot about just life, not necessarily God. It's just how do you use a chainsaw?
Right.
You
Sure.
know, why did all my lawn become weeds all of a sudden?
Sure.
Just random things. And I've had a lot of people that would mentor me per se in this area of how to keep your house running, how
Right.
to fix things, how to do stuff like that. And
Right.
and
Right. Well, one thing I would have talked about Sunday, and I just kind of ran out of time, is one of the only way to learn anything in this world is either to share somebody else's experience, you know, whether you're reading a book or watching a YouTube video, or these relationships that we're talking about. Have somebody come and actually walk you through something, or you have to figure it out yourself and let the chips fall where they may. And I know there's some people who, you know, the joke, they have to touch the stove. You know, there's some people who are like that. They just got to touch the stove themselves to see if it's hot. But you don't have to learn everything that way. And the more effective way, and honestly the less painful way, is to take advantage of the experience of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like, even on stuff like cutting wood or lawn care, I mean, there's no reason for you to have to reinvent the wheel
Right.
yourself if you can learn from somebody else's.
it's called learning vicariously,
Right. And
learning through someone.
right. So you don't just get information, you get vocabulary help here.
So what about the people that, so I do obviously youth ministry, and there's a lot of things that I teach on that obviously youth are not going to listen to.
Right.
Why can't I do this? Why shouldn't I buy that?
Right.
I can tell them all I want, give them great advice,
Right.
hard-earned wisdom,
Right.
but they don't care.
Well, I think it's always the deal. It's what I said. Some people have to touch the stove themselves,
Right.
and I've done that too. I'm not just picking on people who don't listen to me, you know. Sometimes I don't trust anybody else. I remember as a kid, my dad or different people in leadership at the church telling me, you know, if I was you, I would do it this way, and I just didn't listen to it. I had to figure it out myself, and sometimes I was right. I mean, I was. Sometimes my instincts were the right instincts, and I'm glad that I struck out on my own. But more often, much more often, I wished I would have listened to the people who knew what was going on. If I would have just paid a little more attention to people who had already figured, or who had tried the very things I was trying to try. You know, I didn't have to do it. And it's always aggravating to a young minister, especially, but probably aggravating no matter what your job is. To have this great idea for something, and somebody say, well, we've never done it that way, or we tried it that way 2 years ago and that didn't work. It's always aggravating because there's a part of you that rebels against that. But more often than not, when I've ignored that wise advice, I've paid a price. You know, I did learn the stove was hot, and I had a sore hand to show for it. And you don't have to always go out that same direction. And there have been people, like what Gabe was saying in my life too, that because they were there, a fellow named Lee at the very first church that we got serious about put up with all my stupid questions. He's an older guy, and I would ask him all these questions about faith and God and what I didn't understand about it, and I'm sure I was sarcastic and smart aleck, and because that's my nature, and I'm sure I did all that, and he just put up with it, and he would patiently answer those things and walk me through it. I'm not sure where I would have been without that. The first ministry kind of job I had was at Wonder Valley, working with a camp manager, Bruce, and all summer long he just walked me through things, helped me to understand things. And I didn't always listen to him either. I mean, like I said, sometimes I got to touch the stove myself. Right. But I look back at that time, and I'm so glad I had somebody like that to kind of walk me through it. And here's what we talked about on Sunday, and I do believe this. Most of those relationships kind of happen organically. At least from my perspective, they did. Now Lee had set himself up as a high school youth sponsor. Lee had set himself up to be in a position to mentor people. Now, I didn't know it. I was just a guy hanging out. And so for me, it was kind of it just sort of happened, our relationship. It wasn't something but he had already been praying for it. He had already planned for it. And really, it's the same thing for Bruce at Wonder Valley. He had put himself in a position to bring people in, to mentor them. I didn't realize that was what was happening. You know, I was just a
Right.
guy hanging out, trying to make some money one summer. But so you can craft that a little bit. You can take some initiative to build those kinds of relationships, either as a mentor helping younger guys up along, or as a younger person seek somebody out. And the other person may not know what you're up to. I mean, and you know, and that's okay. You won't be able to trap them there, but set up a meeting or two, set up a lunch appointment or two, go get coffee a couple times, and just see where it goes. I think I wish I had known that I had more control of that when I was a younger person, because you do have a lot of control of that. Not total control, but a lot more than you think. What I find as an older guy is I'm constantly hoping people will ask my opinion about things. I got lots of opinions.
But that's not the case.
Well, they don't. No.
It's rare when if someone were to come up to me and say, Gabe, I want you to disciple me. I want
Right.
you to mentor me. That
Right.
doesn't really happen, unfortunately. If it does, it's people that maybe are serious. Maybe people are like you. You're just a guy hanging out, and
Right.
there's an intentional guy that starts the process.
Normally, it has to start from the top. Normally, it has to start from the top down. Normally, it has to start with somebody who's willing to put themselves out there to teach, either to teach a group or a class, or who a boss who sees that the employees that they're working with are more than just guys making money, but I want to invest in these guys. I want to make them better people best I can. And again, you've got to be careful outside of ministry if you're that kind of boss. I mean, you can't force guys who aren't Christians to come to your Bible study in order to get paid, and I understand that. But there's lots of ways that a wise older boss or a wise older foreman or a wise older shop manager can invest in those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And if relationships happen there, well, then that's awesome. You know, Jesus told you're familiar. It's a famous story of Jesus that a farmer goes out and sows the seed, and not all of it does produce.
Right.
In fact, most of it doesn't. A lot of seed doesn't come back the way that you want it to come back. Some of it falls on a hard path, and some of it falls in thorns, and some of it falls in shallow soil. But for everyone that catches, you know, for every seed that produces, you're just going to see such a harvest from that. And that's what we as people wanting to mentor are striving for.
So that's from the people wanting to mentor. So what about how should we approach it? Because we then are saying we all need to have a mentor.
If you're a younger guy or a younger lady and you're trying to invest that way, there's a couple things we can learn from the business world. A lot of businesses on purpose will assign mentors to new employees. A lot of businesses are starting to see that as a productive thing. And I mentioned this on Sunday. If I was a person who was a chef or a farmer or a kindergarten teacher or whatever it is, I would try to find people who were doing the job very well, and I might say, hey, could we get together for lunch sometime? I just want to pick your brain about how you're able to do it all. And those conversations, when you have them in the business world, sometimes are very formal. You know, you'll show up with your list of questions, they'll answer the questions, you'll pay for the lunch, and then that's the end of it. But often, I mean, the person above who you're talking to is flattered you even want to get into this stuff, and often a relationship starts there. And that same principle can work in church. It can. You see somebody who's an older, wiser Christian, maybe somebody who is serving in the church, and you see what they're up to, and you approach them. Now, where you'll have to launch yourself in a little deeper to see those kinds of relationships is you'll probably have to invest in a small group of some sort. You're probably going to have to get involved.
Right.
You probably can't just attend on Sunday morning and sit in the pew and look around and be able to pick out the person who is going to be that person for you. Or you'll pick me. And I can do it for a lot of people, and I'm thrilled to do it for people. But you won't see anybody besides the guys on stage. So you're probably going to get just a little deeper involved to start seeing and meeting those people who are doing it. But just because you're in a small group, you may find that the person who you most connect with in the small group is not the teacher of that group, but this other person in the group who seems like they're going through some of the same things you're going through, but they're just a little further ahead than you are. And so you set up your lunch or you set up your time for coffee and just talk to them. You know, take some initiative. And again, if nothing comes of it, then you're still richer for the experience. I mean, you had 5 or 6 questions. They agreed to it. Even if they tell you no, and again, it's really rare that somebody says no to that request. It does happen, but it's really rare. But even if they tell you no, you've taken a step of faith. God rewards that sort of thing. I'm just convinced that He does. When you take a step of faith, God honors that, and you may not see the reward right off, but I think God rewards that. But if you just have the one meeting and you get your 10 questions answered, and I would have 4 or 5 or 6 or even 10 questions kind of written down that, just to keep the conversation going. Don't force the other person to carry it all. You're the one who initiated it. And if you can afford it, you should probably pay for lunch or coffee if you set it up. I mean, you that first meeting, I mean, you're the one setting it up. You take initiative, But if all you do is get the answer to your 3 or 4 questions, you're still richer for that. You talk to somebody who's further ahead, you figured a few things out, great. But what I find out is that in my life, normally that leads to a second get together or a third get together, and then it just goes where it goes. It's not structured as much as just putting yourself in the orbit of somebody who knows a few things.
And we know that everything Jeff just said sounds easy, maybe, but it can also be very hard, scary for someone to think you're going to come up to someone and you put it all out there, and if they say no, that can be pretty devastating. We understand all that. Actually, what we're trying to do as a church is create opportunities for that thing to happen. We have our home group series. We're trying to get people to understand that small groups are good for that reason, to get you to meet other people, to be in a setting of learning from someone, and then from that group, then just pick someone, pick your leader, ask your leader. I think that's the easiest way to go, because it is hard. I'd imagine if I didn't work at a church and I went to a church, I'm 26 years old, how would I go about finding a guy? How do I know who is capable to be a mentor?
Right. Well, and you won't know necessarily on the first meeting. I mean, you won't. When you set up with somebody ahead of time who seems like they've got a few things figured out that you don't have figured out, you really want to start there. I mean, if you go to somebody and say, I need you to pretty much adopt me, be my spiritual father in the faith, and that's going to just freak somebody out. And that's not really, and again, you don't even know if you want that on the first meeting or second meeting. It's not like dating exactly, but it's kind of like that. I mean, you want to see that you're heading the same direction with the other person. You want to see if you and them are kind of about the same things. But one thing I've noticed that's a weakness in church and at Mount Pleasant, and truthfully at church in America, I've been a church minister in Tennessee and California and here, is there aren't that many times in the church culture where young people and old people get into the same things and they're interacting. Even in our small groups, a lot of times they divide young and old, and so you have all the wisdom in one group and all the energy in another. And there's great benefit in those two groups merging more than they do. And so we're trying to create opportunities for that to happen. I just really think it's a gift when you can build a relationship with somebody who's 10 or 20 years older than you, or older than that, who's been through, when you're just starting off as a parent, somebody who can tell you that, you will get sleep again, you will. Or when you're first off a job, you will get respected eventually, you will. People will listen to you eventually. Or when you're just getting started in your walk with God, and somebody who's went further can say, hey, the bad news is sometimes it's hard to pray. That's the bad news. So don't feel bad. It is hard. It's hard for a lot of folks. But the good news is if you keep walking with God, you're going to find that it gets easier. And this walk, and just to have somebody who can show you those things.
Just talk to you.
Yeah. I think that's a great advantage. We don't know totally how to make all of it happen. In our conversations, we've got ideas and we're striving for those ideas. But the dream is a place where those kinds of relationships happen easily, where they happen naturally. And admittedly, at Mount Pleasant, we're kind of at the beginning stages of building that discipleship network. But that's the dream. And I in my head, when I think about how that would be and what that would be, that's powerful stuff. It's beautiful stuff, and it's encouraging for the one who is just getting started. But ironically enough, it's even more encouraging for the one who has went through some hard experiences, and those experiences aren't wasted. You can take my hard-earned experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived through some pretty tough stuff. You don't have to make the same mistakes I did, and I just think that's a one verse we quoted, and I'm mostly done.
Yeah.
But one verse I quoted Sunday, 2 Timothy 2:2. It's easy to remember, 2 Timothy 2:2, because of that. Paul says, "The things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust those things to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." So the things you've heard me say, that's Paul mentoring. You take those things and entrust them to other people, reliable people, so people who have expressed some interest, and that's that chain again. Paul passed it on to Timothy. Timothy's going to pass it on to other reliable people who will then pass it on to other reliable people. They're qualified to teach others. The verse again, 2 Timothy 2:2, "The things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach it to others." And that was always the plan, Paul's plan, and I think Jesus' plan for discipleship, that you take what you've been given and you make sure it's not wasted. You give it to someone else who can then, again, pass it on.
Right.
So that's it.
I have a few comments here.
Okay.
Eric said, "Good morning."
Hey,
Good morning, Eric. I have Thomas. He said, "I'd love to hear your thoughts on Francis Chan's book, where he's talking about discipleship in the church and how they have that set up where they don't look externally for roles in the church to be filled, but internally because of their discipleship program."
Hiring from within, like for staff and stuff. I think it's a great idea.
Coming from a church where that has been instituted for a while.
Yeah.
Because it'll, as you said, we're in the beginning stages of discipling, of creating leaders, of learning what that's like. And we are in a culture, in a church culture, where you just hire people out. That's just what it is. It is very rare to just hire within, to be a church that doesn't just mentor people, you disciple them. You almost kind of, can I say, breed? You breed people within to be the people that work at the church. I think it's a cool model. It is just, it takes years.
It takes years. Where we've not done that as much here, just speaking honestly about Mount Pleasant, has been more the pulpit ministry. If it's somebody who's going to get up and teach the whole church, or somebody who's responsible for the teaching, we've tended to look to the Bible colleges for that. However, in all the other hiring that we've done, we primarily look from within, and I envision a time soon where we'll hire more of our pastoral staff from inside the church here too. The benefit of that, the great benefit of that, is you already know the character of the person. You already know what they're like. You already know their passions. You already know what they care about, and they already know you. You know, one of the things that's hard about hiring somebody to come to Bedford is that not everybody digs Bedford. I like it, but not everybody does. And if you hire someone who's already here, who already knows what's going on at Mount Pleasant, already knows what this community's like, it's a lot less risk for the church, and hopefully we can get to that place even more so.
I think Thomas is looking for a job in the future.
Thomas, if you're looking for a job, keep us in mind.
And then we have one last comment. The cool thing about the mentor-mentee relationship is how much the mentor learns and grows as well. So it's not just the mentee that's learning, it's the mentor that's picking things up as well.
And that's always the truth. That's true even if you agree to teach the fourth graders this Sunday, you'll get more out of preparing for the lesson probably than the kids are going to get out of receiving it. It's just there's something about being a teacher that forces you to dig deeper than most of us do normally. And that in a mentor relationship, not only do you get that angle, but you also, I think, if it's working well, the mentor starts to share some of their own struggles. I mean, it's not just a sensei kind of relationship, you know, take the grasshopper from my hand. It's not really that kind of a deal. It's more of a, we're all in this together. Right. We're all figuring this out at the same time.
And I have one confession to make. Is it Mary or Marie?
I thought Marie.
It could be. It's spelled Marie.
I thought Marie.
And I feel bad because, you know, after this whole time, you know, you're top fan, and I read the comment and I'm just
say top fan.
And every time I'm just like, Marie or Mary?
Marie, I've always said Marie. In our private conversations here talking about you, which have been very few actually, sorry about that. But when we've had those conversations, Marie is what I've said. So if that's not right, please.
Marie. How could she even tell us if it's not? Spell it.
If it is Mareee, then we're going to know Marie was right.
Oh, she said Jeff is right. Okay. Marie. Okay. Well, it's because people spell their names differently to where, like Jeff Orinder. His name is not Jeff like yours.
He's more the old English spelling.
Geof.
Right.
I'm not going to call him Geoff.
Geoff.
Like,
No. You
so
could, but no,
could,
he wouldn't appreciate it. No.
Well, that was it. That was quick. Sorry about that. But that's all we have for today.
That's all
Do
we
you
have.
Anything else? We're going to try to do this on Thursdays from now on. We have our Let's Talk, or our home group series, which are every Wednesday night. And those are also streamed on Facebook and YouTube, where we do our series. And right now we're going through a series called Everything New.
Everything
Jesus
New.
makes everything new. And it's, what's the
I think it's
synopsis?
I'm not sure. I think it was the temple this week, that Jesus makes the temple new. But what the plot of the whole series is that Jesus, over the next, we're going to talk about how he took a lot of the institutions of Judaism and he reinvents them. And in some cases makes them all about himself. He kind of repurposes Passover into what we celebrate as communion today. He repurposes the Sabbath and the temple to kind of make him about himself, and that he's the new temple, he's the new Sabbath. And we're just talking about those things because some of that stuff may seem kind of heady to talk about, but for that first century Israel, it was a spiritual earthquake to the things that Jesus was saying, and it really was rocking a lot of people's worlds. So we're going to talk about some of that over the next few weeks.
Okay, well, we're glad that you have joined us for this. We hope that it helped you, and if you want to share this with someone, you can very quickly just press the share button and share it with other people if you think this is something that others need to hear. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.